Hi, this is Pat Moorhead, founder and chief analyst at More Insights and Strategy. We are here for another Data Center podcast, episode 5. And I'm so sorry it's been so long. Blame it all on me. It's been a month, but we did make it to 5. And I am just so freaking excited to be here with Will Townsend, Paul Smith-Goodson, and Matt. Matt, how the hell are you, man? You look good.
I'm doing well. I have a little bone to pick with you, though. When we skip these podcasts, I lose my cue to shower. So you have to keep these things on track.
Well, there's a plus and a minus to that. The plus is that you shower, and that's good. Not everybody does do that, so it's very very overrated. But I appreciate that. So, hey, if it's your first time to the More Insights and Strategy Data podcast, I'm going to ask you, like, what rock have you been hiding under? Feedback has been great. We appreciate that. And so, but if it is your first time, we're analyzing this week's top data center edge news. We're talking compute, cloud, security, storage, network operations, data management, AI, quantum, and more. Now, we're going to be talking about publicly traded companies. So I always have to say, do not take any of what we say, infer, joke, I don't know, metaphorically discuss as investment advice. Seek a professional, because this is for educational entertainment purposes only. So with that, let's dive in. I mean, we have got a full slate here. We're talking IBM, Quantum Safe. We're talking Cisco. Surprise, buying another company.
Yeah.
We're going to be talking Watsonx, AI for enterprise. Matt, you and I went to Dell Tech World. I know, Will, you were monitoring from afar. We're going to join into that. We're going to talk about Cisco's full stack observability, some integrations they've been doing before going into Cisco Live. This should be interesting. We're going to talk about the ever-present NVIDIA, who just can't stop bringing out hyperscale GPUs for generative AI training and inference. Which, by the way, you probably saw their stock went up a combined like Intel plus an AMD last week when they raised their guidance by $4 billion on the quarter. Pretty crazy. And we're going to end on more NVIDIA. We're going to be talking vast data and their continuing partnerships. So, Paul, I'm calling your number, buddy. Let's talk about IBM getting prepped for Quantum Safe. What's going on here?
Hey, well, Pat and I were at Orlando for the IBM, I think 2023, and a lot of different announcements, and Quantum Safe was one of the announcements. What they're worried about is in the future, when quantum computing is able to take care of error correction and build enough qubits into the machines, that it'll have the ability to crack RSA and all the other forms of encryption. There's all kinds of studies, but one of the studies was that it would take a quantum machine with 20 million qubits. It'd have to be fault tolerant to crack RSA 2048. And of course, we're a long way from 20 million qubits right now. But with a machine that size, you'd be able to crack just about every encryption there is. So the government and IBM and everybody in the industry is worried about that event, and that's off in the future, and they're saying it's going to happen maybe around 2035. So they're working on new encryption algorithms. NIST has got basically 4 of them selected. It's going to replace and be quantum safe algorithms. They're all lattice type algorithms. And IBM has built a program, they're working on it, it's in progress, called Quantum Safe. And what Quantum Safe will do is be able to take an enterprise and use Quantum Safe to go in and discover what algorithms aren't safe, to determine what has to be done in order to replace them, and actually go in and do the replacement with the Quantum Safe algorithm. So the government's issued NSA has issued a statement that they're going to have to do everything by 2035. So that's what people are working on. There's also a roadmap that IBM has put together showing all the steps in between, and it's quite a comprehensive program they've developed. And it's
So did you say
ongoing.
20 million qubits, Paul? Like 20 million fully formed qubits?
20 million error corrected qubits. Now that could be, there's a difference between physical qubits and logical qubits, and now the error correction direction we're taking is that it's going to take a number of logical qubits to make a lot of physical qubits to make a logical qubit. So that could include logical qubits and physical qubits together. So, but it's going to be a big machine.
Yeah. So when I first heard about all of this, because this concept has been discussed a lot, I was thinking, God, what a great thing! Like something doesn't show up for 10 years, you got to buy something to head it off, and then getting into the discussions, you have countries and other nefarious folks gathering data. They're data harvesting today, where the data is encrypted, that sometime in the future can be unlocked. So I get it, and IBM certainly seems like it's on the forefront. I think they're the only one that has a service that's up and live. Paul?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I saw a demonstration of what they're working on, and it's pretty amazing. I mean, what they put together with software. Of course, it involves AI. Everything involves AI today. So
definitely. Well, good. Hey, let's move on to the next topic here. Will, calling your number on here. Shocking. Cisco buys another company. I mean, it's
it seems like this is how Cisco basically drives its roadmap, is through acquisition. And it's definitely something that they've done in the past, with many, many acquisitions. But, I think the timing for this is quite ideal. Cisco is really focused on delivering its security solutions through the cloud. And what I really like about Armorblox is, they've been around for 4 or 5 years. So they're just not a startup that they just picked up for some intellectual property. So they've had some track record here. But, again, we're going to talk about generative AI. And so this gives Cisco that capability. And what executives are claiming is that this will bring intelligence depth, but more importantly, facilitate better interaction and understanding of security endpoints as well. And that's a big challenge within the enterprise. I know, Matt, you and I kind of do double duty a lot of times on security. And there's been this like proliferation of point solutions. When I talk to customers, an average mid-market company is managing 30 to 50 at a time. You get to a large multinational, it could be hundreds of point solutions. So it's become untenable. And I think this is a smart way for Cisco to, refine its portfolio, focus on its vision and its execution of its security cloud strategy. But I mean, my goodness, you can't swing a dead cat and not hit a generative AI application these days, right, guys?
or live cat, for that matter.
Yeah. Listen, and I just want a disclaimer: we do not promote swinging cats around on the show.
Good point.
So
thank you. I own a cat.
Please do not picket my office.
You can use AI to calculate how high a dead cat would bounce. So.
Exactly. So, Will, you're absolutely right. I mean, I think 75% of my briefings and advisories are around how enterprises can best unlock the value of generative AI. And by the way, AI, it's so funny the way that kind of the hype curve goes. I mean, the first AI algorithms were developed in the 1960s. Yeah. And then we saw AI that was more like analytics, wasn't using machine learning or deep learning. And then here we are on generative AI, and there were some consumer applications that people thought were just bonkers and fun. And we saw Google go down $200 billion in value based on the potential threat from Microsoft, taking that away. We saw NVIDIA go up, the value of an Intel plus a Dell, right. In 2 days. So it's top of mind. You see all the SaaS companies putting in there, whether it's Salesforce, ServiceNow, SAP, IBM, apps. It's really everywhere. And when it comes to security, I mean, if the bad guys, bad people, whatever you want to call them, are using AI to attack, you have to have, it's kind of like AI spy versus spy, which we're all old enough to appreciate that comic book. But that's kind of where we are. So totally makes sense. On Cisco's earnings call, Chuck outlined 3 core areas of growth, and number 2 is security. Right? He talked about the Cisco Security Cloud, which I like to call it Fabric. Right? It's essentially networking. To get the Security Cloud, you have to have the networking fabric. Right?
All the context around it. Yeah,
it's like a twofer, and I like it because it really makes the hybrid multi-cloud a reality. Because enterprises know that they're going to be multi-cloud and they're going to have some of it hybrid. And I like that play that Cisco is making here. Yeah,
lots of headroom, I think, for them in security for sure.
Yeah. So speaking of AI, Paul, you and I were again in Orlando for this great party, and even though it wasn't all AI, it was kind of all about AI.
Well, another thing that they announced in Orlando was Watsonx platform, and that's what IBM is going to use to power the next generation foundation models for business. It's for scaling, for accelerating AI. It's for data. It's got a full technology stack for training and tuning and deploying the models. So. And IBM plans to infuse Watson AI throughout basically all the major software products. So it'll be interesting. Watsonx has basically 3 components. It's got Watson AI, Watson Data, and Watson Governance. Watson AI is a platform. It's built on. I wrote about. IBM's super AI computer in the cloud back in February, and that was before GPT came out. And it's basically an amazing cloud machine, and that's what Watson AI is built on. With the data portion, Watson Data will allow the enterprises to basically scale anything they want to. It's going to be generally available, I think, in July, as is Watson AI. So, it's a comprehensive package.
AI, to me, I look at it as consumer and B2C and then B2B, and then there's the B2B2C portion of that. And, doing poems and, I always like to put a French bulldog riding a horse with wings in heaven. Right, I can't tell you how many times I've cranked that out, or a Porsche GT2 kind of jumping the Grand Canyon. Right, I mean that's fun and everything, but when it comes to serious business, the rules are different. So first of all, you're not looking at planet level data. Okay, what you're looking at is private data. Now, you might train something out there and then apply and infer it by using your own corporate data, but it's very different. You don't want to put all of your intellectual IP up in the cloud, which is why still 85% of all investments are on-prem. And in fact, even Andy Jassy said on a CNBC program that 90% of all enterprise spend is still on-prem. So I think IBM has a lot of room here. There's a lot of layers to it. Some questions I have, but fundamentally their approach is open model, right? Which is the way to go. They have a partnership with Hugging Face to be able to leverage those models. Governance is huge. I mean, that's one of the 3 struts, as Paul said. If you look at IBM's customers, I mean, biggest financial institutions, biggest retailers, governments out there, big time manufacturers. Governance is everything. Healthcare. I mean, you screw up on this stuff, you get sued, you get hacked, you get hated, right? So, and my final comment is one of the companies where generative AI was not a surprise. They literally went GA of a massive hyperscaler level data center with tens of thousands of GPUs interconnected for training. So it wasn't something that crept up on them, but I am looking very much forward to how they evolve this and how they capitalize on this when it comes to inference and actually running the programs and understanding better how they operate with the public cloud.
Yeah.
Hey, let's dive into Dell Tech World. If nothing else, we are professional show attenders. Matt, I'm going to give you first crack in that. I'm going to dive in, and we'll love to get your insights on networking and security.
You bet.
Yeah, so let's keep the AI drum roll going, right? In case you haven't tuned out yet, you can tune out now. No, so AI, I took away 3 biggies from Dell Tech World. They had 5 themes they were focused on, but to me, there were 3 I was really interested. What it's doing in AI, what it's doing in multi-cloud, and what it's doing in security. AI to me was like fascinating. You think of Dell sometimes as, fast follower can be a negative term, but it's a really positive term. They're very pragmatic. They wait until technologies mature, and then they kind of jump in and they do a great job of positioning themselves with a really strong portfolio to back them up. On the AI front, they kind of jumped out in front. They announced this partnership with NVIDIA where they co-developed a system. It's the XE9680, NVIDIA, Intel, and Dell working together. It's a 2-way Intel server with up to 8, yes, that's 8 H100 GPUs built into it. TDP is through the world, power ratings through the world, weight is like 240 pounds. But it comes completely configured to support your generative AI environment, right? They've got pre-trained models that you can drop in. And Pat, I like the way you talked about, AI and generative AI and kind of the global versus local. If for folks that are listening or watching, if you think about generative AI in the enterprise and like what's the real use of it, think of like a law firm, like a really big ropes and gray law firm that has been in existence forever and has decades of case law that's been digitalized or digitized, and some young associate needs to come in and do a search on some obscure kind of case that they're working on. This domain specific large language model allows Gropes and Ray in that case to quickly create a Gropes and Ray generative AI session, if you will, or language model. That makes it very easy for that lawyer to go in, that young lawyer to go in and find relevant results to his search. Rather than getting a whole bunch of junk that they have to sift through, they get super relevancy. That's the cool thing about generative AI, and that's what they did with NVIDIA and Intel. Sorry, Pat, I didn't want to jump in on that.
No, sir, at all. I think that was a big one, and I think Dell's challenge on AI is going to be to convince people why the training and the inference is best done on-prem or on the edge, right? Yeah. I'm going to add multi-cloud, right? Multi-cloud was a big one here, and I've been on a tear on the hybrid multi-cloud for probably 10 years now, and it's nice to see Dell come out, create services that interconnect on-prem, edge, and the major public clouds, but also putting services, and I like, they had ground to cloud, and then they had cloud to ground. Cloud to ground were those Dell pieces of software, particularly right now storage, that interconnect the public cloud with on-prem, and then ground to cloud are these services where you essentially Kubernetes and storage management layer services, and I believe they're going to add a networking layer to that in the future. One thing I really appreciated that Dell did that, quite frankly, a lot of vendors don't do who claim multi-cloud, is they showed vendors. They showed vendor names, right? AWS logo, GCP, Azure. I want to see Oracle Cloud and the IBM Cloud, but also Red Hat and VMware that pulled it all together. And one big thing hit me. Dell has been known as this company who can really put together different parts of the industry. Right now, they started in hardware, right? Like, how do I assemble a PC or a server or something like that?
Yeah.
And that was their prowess. When you think about it, the hybrid multi-cloud is a collection of things that you put together and integrate. And I feel like Dell is pulling together those integration points.
Yeah.
And not only do they get, pay per service, let's say if they're, managing Kubernetes through the hybrid multi-cloud, but also pulling in storage. They were very clear that the starting point for all of this is storage.
Yep.
That's their emanating point. And, they are the biggest storage company on the planet. So that makes sense. And still most of the planet data is still on-prem. So I like where they're starting. They're definitely, HP with GreenLake definitely had, that early lead. HPE just by definition does offer more services, but Dell is definitely making some nice progress here.
Yeah, Pat, it's funny because you talk about the partnerships, and the theme at Dell Tech World was, it was like innovation to advance people, right? Which is a great theme. But the key on innovation there, I think when we hear innovation, we always think about technology and developing new technology. And they've done that. Like the XE9680 is a great example, but they have also done an amazing job of innovating through partnerships. So, on the AI front, it was NVIDIA, Intel, Dell. On the multi-cloud, it was all of those cloud providers and VMware and Red Hat. And then on the security front, they did the same thing. It's not like they came out and said, we're going to build, the next great mousetrap that everybody needs to go buy. What they said is, to what Will said, right? 30 to 50 point solution vendors in every mid-sized company, much more at enterprises. Dell's saying, look, we can't do this. We're not going to be the answer, and we know you have all of these solutions out there. So we're going to bring everybody together, and we're going to give you these curated solutions to help drive zero trust protections. And by the way, we're going to set up a lab where you can go and you can take these environments and you can test them, and you can do all kinds of validation that meets U.S. government specs. That's really cool stuff, right? There's not a new product they announced around that, but to me, that was maybe the most compelling security announcement I've heard this year out of any company. So sorry.
I was just going to say, Matt, I agree. And this plays really well to Dell's strengths with focusing on industry standards and ecosystems and that sort of thing. And I think that project, Fort Zero, is involving 30 vendors. And like you said, nothing really net new, but more of a packaging exercise. What I also really like about that is that Dell is the single point. They're the integrator for all of that. So single point of accountability for not only the planning, the deployment, but also the ongoing management. So super strong, and I tuned into the live cast. I was traipsing around Italy with my daughters last week in Rome and Venice. The other theme that really stood out for me from Dell Tech World, and by the way, I'll be publishing a Forbes article later today. It's with our editor, and I'll be linking back to the article, Matt, that you wrote. It was a great article. You go into a lot of depth around AI and security and some other elements, but sustainability, and that's no shock, right? I mean, every company has a focus on sustainability. We were talking about Cisco earlier. They're certainly a leader with what they're doing with net zero and enabling that. And as I thought about sustainability, I also started thinking about some of the operational expense lines for not only enterprises, but service providers. For service providers, guess what their number one OpEx line is? It's their energy bill, right? Yeah. And so this has a real impact on not only mobile network deployments, the 5G deployments, but also what enterprises are considering with traditional networking deployments as well as private networking deployments.
Yeah, well, it's funny you say that because in my article, and you can find it no, I'm just kidding. But in the piece I wrote around cooling, there's around sustainability. I was amazed at the number of cooling companies, immersion cooling, direct liquid cooling, direct to chip cooling, that were on the show floor out showing their wares. It used to be, it was kind of interesting when Paul talks about quantum computing, my head immediately goes to science fiction. And in the cooling world, I think of like immersion cooling and some of these other types as science fiction for mechanics, right? It's really cool and interesting, but it's gaining a lot of steam, and there was a lot of emphasis put on. Intel had it in their booth, Dell had it in their booth, Schneider obviously had it in there. It's sustainability it's not just real; it's becoming operationalized.
Yeah.
All right, let's move to the next topic here. Cisco and observability through integration. Some interesting stuff coming on before we go into Cisco Live.
I know, and Pat, you and I think Matt, you're going to be at Live next week as well.
Oh, cool! And, so exciting!
Oh, yeah.
I'm so glad you're going to be there. I didn't know that, Matt.
I'm getting a new blazer.
Gosh,
I better bring mine.
God, how we didn't get a picture of Dell Tech World, Matt. I'm just like, how did this happen? But
we're too famous. That's what it is.
I don't know. We don't want to be overexposed, do we?
But let's talk about observability, full stack observability. And this is something that Cisco has been very keenly focused on with their ThousandEyes acquisition. That really sort of set the table for them. And
hey, Will, can I interrupt real quick? Can you explain what full stack observability is?
Well, it's just about having visibility to network performance and understanding the sort of things that can affect performance, and oftentimes there are gaps that occur as network operators deploy networks and they're deploying security, and full stack observability just brings a level of granularity so that network operators can sort of understand what's going on with their networks. And so this particular announcement is integrating the ThousandEyes platform with Cisco's AppDynamics platform to really enhance what Cisco is providing its customers with digital experience monitoring. And I think this is super compelling because, with modern work, with highly distributed, folks around the world having to work, we have to rely on the internet oftentimes and the internet's availability. And that's where ThousandEyes really comes into play. It provides that level of visibility it's amazing. I've seen the dashboard, and you can see outages on a global map. But then AppDynamics is another superpower that Cisco has in its back pocket there that helps monitor that application experience. Because at the end of the day, you've got to, as an enterprise, provide the same user experience from an application perspective, whether you're on campus, you're in a branch location, or if you're working in Italy, like I was last year. So I think this is really strong, and it's demonstrating Cisco's taking these assets. They're not being siloed about it, and they're bringing these assets together with an integration, and they're creating new value for their customers. And I think that's super exciting.
Yeah.
I thought that at the last Cisco channel conference, they talked about integrating the two observability platforms. Was this something new, or did it go GA, or was this on a different vector?
Well, it's specifically focused on digital experience monitoring and improving that platform's capability. So,
got it.
There have been integrations going on, and during some of the pre-briefs for Live next week that I can't share because they're obviously under embargo, but there'll be some additional things that are shared, additional integrations that are going to create, again, more value vectors for their customers.
Hey, Will, one last question for you. By the way, I love App, man. I think that's I saw a demo of it, and being able to observe and kind of play into performance across the entire app stack is just fascinating to me. But talk about Intersight. Does this eventually all plug in through Intersight, and is this managed up through Intersight, or do these remain, separate citizens, or how's that play?
I think you're going to see all of that come together, Matt. So, from my perspective, Intersight does play a role here. And, I think, Cisco's also had some challenges in the past just with orchestration and automation in general, and sort of cleaning that up because, again, a lot of their growth from a roadmap perspective has been through acquisition. And so it creates these stepchildren. And I think, one of the things that we're going to hear more about at Cisco is how they're going to sort of consolidate a lot of that and make it easier not only for their partners to sell the products, but for their customers to consume the products.
Oh, great.
But it's a great question.
I love observability. Nothing else that it's something you never thought you knew until you realize you needed it.
Right.
Yeah.
And with the fractalization of infrastructure and the fractalization of applications, knowing what the heck is going on,
Oh yeah.
particularly when it's not, in one building, is paramount. I mean, most modern applications are API based, and every one of those APIs isn't served by the company whose application. It could go off to a weather service.
That's right.
It could go off to, check credit score. It could go off and pull in and do some nascent AI type of capability at AWS or something like that. So observability is hot, and 100% I think it's headed toward the same way of security, which is, hey, I love all these best of breed observability things, but I don't want to string all of them together. And therefore, I'm expecting consolidation, expecting, people who maybe started at the endpoint, moving up the stack, people who started in the data center, adding on application types of things. And I think Cisco timed it perfectly on this. Again, Cisco strategically is just, they're really good.
Yes.
They're a really good idea how to pull this stuff. Now, 3/4 of the revenue is still, don't be confused. 3/4 of the network is freaking networking. Okay. And they're additive, collab, observability, security, and stuff like that is rocking.
Yeah, and they're not a one-trick pony, right? So they've got all these opportunities, for growth in these areas, like we were discussing earlier with security. And looking at their recent financials, they grew security fairly well, but they've only gotten started with their cloud vision. So I expect to see more things from them.
And they take a toll regardless of where it is: on-prem, edge, public cloud, sovereign cloud, cha-ching, 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 right?
Right.
That's why I like it. I'm a big fan of hybrid multi-cloud fabrics.
Yeah.
And if you're listening and you're a company out there, you need one before your competitors eat you for lunch. Hey, let's go into NVIDIA, company formerly in the $1 trillion club, now down to a measly $985 billion in value. Matt, do we really need another AI ecosystem part? I mean, what is this? I just got used to DGX. What the heck is MGX?
I'll tell you what. So here's another way to ask it: do we need another server vendor? Right. I mean, man, these guys are incredible. As if, I feel like this was, somebody who intercepts a football and kind of dives into the end zone, right? That was Jensen at Computex, and it gave an amazing 2-hour keynote. And I usually can't last more than 10 minutes, but he was fascinating. And one of the things he announced was this MGX. It's a reference design. It's a 1U, 2U, 4U server design built around NVIDIA, NVIDIA Grace Hopper, or NVIDIA with Intel as well. And it's designed for OEMs and ODMs to go design their own platforms. I mean, it feels to me kind of like, based on the openness of it and the adherence to OCP, Open Compute, it feels like it really is kind of designed for cloud and hyperscalers, especially since with the uptake of the ODMs, Tyan, Asus, and a few others. But it's, I'll tell you what, the hits just don't stop with these guys.
I know.
They do not stop. And it really, I was using this as a kind of a tee up for the larger, just, does NVIDIA, are they showing any signs of slowing down? And I just haven't seen it yet. Paul, I'm sure you have it, some thoughts, seeing that you're Mr. AI, but holy heck. If we weren't live, I'd say another one.
I think MTX is probably going to be, one of the volume products, and it's going to be, I think it's going to be probably used a lot more than what they think it's going to be used, and it's not as costly as DGX, and so I think it's going to see a lot more volume than they expect.
Matt, you mentioned Grace Hopper, and I caught some news and shared a tweet earlier this week. it was between SoftBank and NVIDIA, and SoftBank's going to have exclusive access with leveraging Grace Hopper for virtualized RAN deployments, where distributed unit, basically kind of maxes out the capabilities of a traditional GPU. So, I mean, Pat, I don't want to steal your thunder, but I find it intriguing because they're combining GPU and CPU to accomplish this with Grace Hopper. So,
yeah, and they actually announced, yeah, you're right, and that Grace Hopper is interesting because it's ARM based, right? CPU, GPU, shared coherent memory. They have the NVLinks built into it, so GPU to GPU. I mean, this is at one point, and I don't know if it was a Freudian slip or some other slip, but he referred to Grace Hopper as an AI supercomputer instead of an AI super chip, which I thought was really interesting. And they're looking at, when they talk about AI and they talk about the data center, they're talking in much more abstract terms, right? The data center is the server now, is the compute platform. It's no longer nodes within. Your workloads are distributed everywhere across. And if you think about the thousands of servers in the data center, they're viewing those as, just different elements on a motherboard, if you will. His vision is so far out in front of everybody else.
yeah.
It makes me wonder, like, where, how everybody lines up behind that or competes with that.
There are a lot of things going on in the industry right now. Nobody likes it when somebody makes most of the money. There's always a reaction. DGX Cloud was a great example where, Jensen was really talking about, hey, really want to do to the AI market what we did to the gaming market, where we create the value, we're creating the experience, and then it gets fulfilled by partners. Okay. And you can imagine where all the money is, right? I mean, and so they brought up this thing called DGX Cloud, which is sold by NVIDIA salespeople, invoiced by NVIDIA salespeople, and fulfilled by GCP, Oracle, and Azure. Well, guess who didn't take on DGX Cloud? AWS, right? Some of the shrewdest cloud business folks out there. And then, by the way, you get the DGX Cloud sold by NVIDIA and fulfilled through the channel. And then you put some of frameworks and models on it, generative AI stuff. So you're paying NVIDIA for certain models as well. I think we talked about this on the last podcast. I mean, it's like genius, maybe a little bit evil genius, but we'll see. And hey, guess what? What happens when you're putting an entire system together is you also get networking, right?
Yeah.
And we don't need this, Marvell or Broadcom stuff right now. We're just going to kind of create our own lossless Ethernet interconnect, which they talked about, which was interesting because they were all about fiber channel up until this point. So you can imagine the industry reaction. But what NVIDIA has shown over the last decade, you want to try to make this an open standard, CUDA versus OpenCL, good luck.
Right.
Find me, chase me, right? And they just keep cranking. AMD has shown they can bring in a very capable hardware platform, right? Very capable. In fact, that's one of the reasons why AMD is having such success in the let's say the top 10 supercomputers, is because they write their own stack. Right. They're not leveraging off of CUDA or any libraries that go into that. And that's where AMD is having its success. So to put a good competitive front to NVIDIA on AI, you got to have the right hardware, the right software, the right library, and the right services, and the right networking. We'll see what tricks that come up with storage. But right now, as we're about to dive in, NVIDIA is leveraging both pure storage and vast data for the highest performance for their clusters and their cluster of clusters. I always like to say clusters. Remember when clusters was a a bad thing.
It's still
Clusters.
It still is. Hey, you know what's more? You just said something that's so fascinating, Pat. Though, and this is what makes NVIDIA more impressive. In an era of open source, where open source rules the data center, these guys are killing it with a proprietary stack.
Yeah.
Holy heck! You gotta love it. You gotta love it. Ah, the genius.
They're looking more like Apple every day.
Really, they really are. Yeah.
And you can't beat Jensen's argument about power.
Yeah.
No.
Other than, I mean, the reason the GPU, quite frankly, is so good, particularly at training, the model shifts so much. And all of NVIDIA's, A100, stuff like that, they have ASICs on it, right? They have tensor cores. Those are special blocks. I think they're 4-bit blocks to do very specific. But the beauty of the GPU is its flexibility.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's 10x faster in training than a CPU, which is the ultimate in software flexibility, and they bridge the gap of complexity with CUDA between the two. No, we're going to be talking about NVIDIA for a long time, and I just can't wait, right, to see how the industry kind of lines up. And I love it. And sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. I mean, Apple has like 90% of the industry profits of smartphones, yet they only have 20% market share.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's where we are. Hey,
I'll share a quick little anecdote. So I actually interviewed for a job with Jensen many years ago. It was for the HP account manager position. I did not get that opportunity, but it was fascinating. It was however many years ago that was, 25, 30 years ago. But just a really, really smart guy with just tremendous vision and, the willingness to invest in something for years before there's a payback. And that's sort of unheard of. And
like 10 years all in. Hey, let's move to the last topic. Hey, more NVIDIA with a little bit of VAST.
Oh, wow. Shocking.
Yeah. Gotta love it, man. So VAST is the star of this story. It happened a couple of weeks ago. And again, this was kind of like the NVIDIA with MGX. This is more of the VAST is on such a tear. So they got, they certified their platform with NVIDIA's SuperPod. I guess, about 2 weeks ago they announced it. But, I've been thinking about storage in general. And look, I've been around a long enough time where storage has never really been interesting or exciting. But now, that every company is very data centric and data focused, it really is all about storage. And this company, they're an interesting company. They go out and they cut their teeth in the most highly competitive, from a performance perspective, deals, right? The 3-letter agencies, the life sciences, financial services, where every single microsecond of latency matters. These guys went out and they won, and they went out with a kind of like NVIDIA, right? They went out with a solution that was very, it was designed and built by them, for them, in a very bespoke fashion, for these very specific use cases. And they've done a great job of bucking the, talk about innovator's dilemma, right? Where you build for or technology for a market, and then it's hard to kind of transition based on your commitments. They've done such an amazing job of being able to come downstream, if you will, or down segment, and start hitting the masses, first with HPE and what they did with GreenLake, and now going into an adjacent, high performant, but still adjacent market with NVIDIA. And right now, you mentioned Pure, I think they might be the only certified SuperPod. They won't be the last, but they're first to market with that certification. And it just shows this company, great technology, but really smart business sense as well, to be able to kind of go out ahead of kind of where the market's going and align themselves as, the performance leader in that space.
Great update. I'm wondering if they replace Pure as the DGX focus. It'll be very interesting to see. Yeah, VAST needs to grow. HP is a good vehicle, probably not the last one that we're gonna see. So guys, we did it, man. We covered a lot of topics. Great to see all of you talking IBM, Cisco, Dell, NVIDIA, VAST data, and then more NVIDIA, and then a little bit more NVIDIA, but a little bit more AI and a little bit more generative AI, a little sprinkled AI on top.
A little more NVIDIA.
Exactly. It's had NVIDIA, but I have a feeling this is going to be dominating our conversations moving forward. And this is good. I mean, where there's pandemonium, there's opportunity, right? Yep. And the industry needs our informed points of view. They need our advisory, and they need market education on outbound. And here we are, baby. This is what we do. We're kind of made for this. So, yeah, I mean, AI is everywhere. Security, storage, networking, applications, consumer, B2B, B2BC. I mean, it's going to be everywhere. Yep. And I don't think this is, the NFT, right? This is not a fad. This is definitely a trend. And we finally see a spark that I think will pay, trillions of dollars in investment in IT. Great to see y'all. Have a great weekend. Thanks for tuning in. Hit that subscribe button if you like what you've seen. If you have complaints, you know where Will is on Twitter. Going to ingratiate and love the show. You know how to find me on Twitter. But anyways, wherever you are on the planet, good morning, good afternoon, good night. Take care.